Well, after about 2 weeks, our elk form finally came in, and so we're going to unbox that right now and see what we've got. These elk forms are so big that they have to ship them cut in half, and it does add to the cost of shipping. So we'll see what this looks like here. So here's the upper half. See, they cut them in half here, and we've got to glue them back and put them back together. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to put this together using some expanding foam, and we've got screws preset, and I've got some index marks on here so we can get this right. So we have to mix our foam. It's a two-part foam, and we're going to get our scale set up, and let's see here. Okay, and we're going to mix this, and we don't have a lot of time when we do this, so we've got to work fast. Pour this on here. And we're going to put the screws in. And now we wait. This is going to expand, take about 2 or 3 minutes, and glue our form back together. So we give this thing about 10 minutes. So now we're going to chip off some of the expanded foam. And then the next step will be, we'll smooth up all these edges, and I'm going to put some reinforcing rods and screws in it, and we'll come back and show you that. Okay, next we're going to run some rods in. I've got these long screws here, and I'm going to run one of these in from each side, and then I've got a piece of threaded rod, 3/8 inch threaded rod, I don't know, about 20 inches long. I've sharpened the tip, and I've created a slot on one end for like a screwdriver, and I'm going to chuck that in the drill and actually drive these in. But we'll start with these threaded rods from the side to start with. I'll come back and countersink those. And then right now I'm just going to chuck up this 3/8 inch rod in my drill with that pointed end. We're going to drive it in from the back side here. Going as far as we can with that, and now I'll get a flat blade for my screwdriver and I'll drive it in the rest of the way. Okay, we have this heavy duty safety hanger here for heavy duty animals like this elk, and it'll be hung on a lag bolt, and it'll fit in this nice heavy duty bracket here. And we have it laid out where we want to drill it, and so we're going to pre-drill this to remove all this inner material here. And to do that, we're going to use a 3/4 inch drill bit. So there's the finished hanger. It's held on with 6 1.5 inch number 12 wood screws. I've taken and I've used a little Bondo on the inside just to kind of clean up the inside a little bit. And then what we'll have is, we'll have our lag bolt that will go into the wall, and then it'll fit up into here. So it's a heavy mount, so you need heavy duty hardware for it. So what I've done here is I've tried to measure across this distance here and match that with this. And I've created a straight line here that I'm going to be sawing off. So this will fit onto the mannequin, and it might take a little bit of work to get this to fit, but we'll start working on it. But that's a starting point for where we cut this off. Okay, this morning, just some other details that we want to work on prepping is we want to work on checking this eye socket here. And what I've done is I've taken my little knife here and I've opened that up just a little bit so that our 250 IQ elk eye will fit nice, and we'll have a little play in here. We want a little bit of play in there. And then what we'll do is we're gonna pack a little clay in behind the eye, put some clay in here, and then we'll align the pupil up. And I have marked halfway point in the eye orbit there, and then I've also marked reference points on the eye. And a little bit later, when we actually mount this eye in here, we'll be able to line those up. So I have gone through and opened up those eye sockets with this knife. The next thing that we want to do is the lip line here. And what I do to start with is I'll take my knife and I will cut around this just to cut through that foam. Then I'll take my lip tucking tool and I'll press this in here. And I'll compress all of that. And then I come in with my little saw and I will saw this open. I need enough space to tuck the upper lip and the lower lip and to tuck that below the surface of this foam. And so I'll saw that. The last thing I'll do is I'll take this sandpaper and I will come in here and work any sharp edges so that we have a nice rounded smooth surface for that. Also, a little bit later, I'll come in and I'll prep this form by taking off all of these seams. We'll get those all sanded up and taken care of. But that's our next step, is to get the lip line, the eye socket, and then the tear duct. And the tear duct, we do the same thing. Okay, so now we're just dremeling out the nostrils, and then once we get this done, we will put in an artificial septum. Okay, so we have the nostrils taken care of here. We've got those shaped up. We used a Dremel tool, and I've got some riffler files and some sandpaper, and we've got this ready to install, or getting ready to think about installing our artificial septum. And that'll be our next project on here. Okay, this is what we call a speed septum, and I'm just using plastic from a milk jug that I've kind of put some pink color on. And if you look inside, I'll see if I can put a flashlight behind here, and you'll kind of see the effect this has. So there's one on each side, and we'll just kind of figure out that, but you cut a slot using a septum tool. It's called a speed septum. And you just cut this in on each side, and then you put your plastic in place, and it creates this septum in the center of the nose. And of course, we will be tucking all of this nostril skin back in here once we go to mounting this thing. So right now we're just going to trim off the excess plastic, and that's our speed septum. Okay, we're going to come back in because this still has a little bit of thawing to do, and then we'll start to work on this cape. What we're doing here is we're shaving around the eyelids. We got to do the lips, the tear ducts. We're just shaving everything as thin as possible using our skiving tool here. I don't know if you can see this, but we have to shave all around this nostril here and get all of that extra skin thinned down. So I use my little shaving deal here and skiving tool, and we'll just go around and take our time and get everything shaved down thin. All right, we just pulled the cape onto the form, and it's gonna be a little tight, but I haven't stretched the cape yet. I haven't even undone the ears, got them turned right side out yet. And it looks like it's gonna fit fine. We just measured, it looks like we got about 7 inches of mane hair. Eyes line up, tear ducts line up. The antler burrs look good. So now we'll continue prepping the cape. Okay, so I finally got these ear liners done. I did not video the actual process, but what I used was an ELE Bighorn Limited LTD ear liner. So these are really nice ear liners with a 2-part epoxy from Mackenzie. The cartilage liner epoxy is what we used, and it has about a 2-hour cure time. So you got plenty of time to kind of work on the ears. So what we're going to do now is we're going to put this in the refrigerator tonight, And then we will figure out when we decide that we're going to actually mount this boy up. So we're getting close. I don't know if you can see this or not, but I have about every, I don't know, 8 inches, I have made an index mark on here, and I've decided to tube this cape and put it on partially pre-sewn down the back. And to do that, I'm using Fireline 20-pound test single strand line for sewing thread, and I've started it right here. I double knotted it and put a little dab of super glue on that to hold that knot. This front side will remain open, and it's going to require me to take the antlers off the form, and then when I'm ready to mount, I will put the hide paste on, put the form on, and try to pull this on like you'd put on a glove to get it positioned towards the back, pin everything in place, and then I can bag the face to keep the cape moist while I get the hide in position and so on. And then I can model my clay for my eyes, my tear ducts, the nose pad and ear butts and all of that. I can get that all done, and then I can slip the face into place and go from there. Once the cape's on, I'll have to reattach the antlers and mache the skull. So there'll be a considerable amount of work to do still, but I just want to make sure that this cape can stretch onto the back side of that form. It's going to be a tight fit, so we'll see how that goes. As you can see, we've made a little bit of progress here, about this long, and we're keeping our stitches 1/4 inch apart or less. I had my first index mark here, and I'm just reaching my next index mark, and it looks like we're lining up. We're not stretching things out too much. And we're, as I said, doing a single stitch with this Fireline 20-pound test. Very strong stuff. It's slippery enough that you can take about 4 or 5 stitches before you suck it up. And I'm using a curved tri-tip needle. And the key here is just to be patient and take your time and work your way. And then I've got some bags on the face and some plastic bags on some of the areas that I'm not working on at the moment, just to try to keep moisture in the cape, so keep the cape from drying out too much. So this is called a tube, and we'll see how this goes. We are at our second index mark here. We're about 16 inches now, and it's going rather quickly, which I'm happy to see. And we will press this stitch down. I'm keeping the cape wet, putting plastic where I'm not at, and we'll just keep pushing on until we get to the end here now. So the form is prepped, ready for the cape. I have tubed the cape, meaning I've pre-sewed part of the dorsal incision. And so we'll be putting that on, and it allows you to put the cape on kind of like you're pulling on a glove. And so we'll get that on, and then we'll have to install the antlers, mache the skull, and then we'll start working on our clay work. But what I've done right now is I have used a stout rougher tool, and I've roughed up the muscle detail. I have carved out a little trough in the back of the dorsal incision, and that will allow us to put clay in there, and then we can press our incision down into that clay. So we're getting ready to mount this guy up. We're gonna model the eyes, lips, tear ducts, get the ear butts in place, and start the mounting process. So here in a second, we're gonna get ready and pull this cape on. What I've done is I filled that back area with clay so I can tuck my incision into. I have carved out the ear butts and added a little clay for that. And then we're going to show you what we did with the cape here. Okay, we're getting ready to pull this cape on, but before we did, what I did was I packed these ear butts with clay. And so I've filled those up a bit, give it a little fullness. And then if I have to, I can add a little bit more once we get this on the form. But that'll be a good starting point there. So we're getting ready to put this on the form. So we have our eye here. We just packed the backside with clay, and I packed the eye orbit with clay, and so now we're going to start installing our eyes. So I've got the eye semi-modeled with the tear duct area and the ear butt back there. We're going to flip it over and do the other side. So we just shade the skull, and that is made up of 50-50 plaster of Paris and paper pulp fiber. So we'll give that about 10 minutes and we'll kind of sculpt that up, and then we're going to hide paste the face and get the face in place here. This is day 2 after the initial mounting of the elk here, and so what we're going to do today is take off all this plastic, and we'll go through and check the eyes, the nose, the ears. I'll probably put some tanning oil on the nose pad and around the eyes just to kind of keep that soft and supple. And so we're just going to methodically go over this elk and check every detail. So I've got the eyes and the ears and the tear ducts semi-detailed, and now what I got to do is I got to pull the nostril plastic, and that's put in there just to hold the nostril skin in place while that glue dries. And so what I've got to do is check it this morning, readjust, and then put this stuff back in. Then I've got to, so I've done the eyes, the tear ducts, the ears. I've checked the entire body, pressing it down, making sure there's no air pockets or pockets of hide paste. And I've removed a lot of the carding, which holds the detail. I still have to get to the brisket area and the back area that's stapled to the backboard. And we'll get to all of that as we go, but it just takes some time to go through. This is the second day after mounting adjustments. Last thing I've got to do is I'm going to card the ears just to keep those edges nice and crisp. But other than that, we're done for probably another 20 hours or so. We're just going to let it dry. We'll put bags over it to hold the moisture in, and we'll go from there. Today I'm going to actually pull all the nails around the antler burrs. They've been in since we mounted, and we'll make sure everything is in place there and groom around those, and then probably re-nail that. This thing has been drying. I usually put plastic over it at night, and for a couple hours a day I'll run a fan on it. Everything seems to be pressing down great. I've got all of the carding on here just to emphasize some of the muscle detail and to hold things in place while things are drying, because as it dries it tends to move. So we're constantly, I've been checking twice a day, just going over it. But once a day, starting now, I take everything off. I re-groom everything, I check everything, eyes, nose, ears, tear ducts, all of that. All right, so we're at day 5, and I removed all of the carding, and so we've got quite a bit of detail that's starting to show up as this thing dries. I'm gonna leave all the carding off here for a while. I'm gonna put a fan on this thing, and then sometime today I'll come back in and I'll recard everything. I've groomed them up. I've checked the symmetry of the eyes. So things are looking pretty good for now for day 5. So this is day 6, and we're pretty much finished
with everything now. We're going to leave him carded for probably the next 8 days. And the only thing that I'll be double checking is some slight grooming, combing, brushing, checking around the eyes. The eyes are getting pretty solid now. But he'll probably just be drying now for the next 8 days, which will give us a full 2 weeks of drying time before we start the finishing process. I have removed the nails around the burrs, but I've replaced them with using my nail gun with some 5/8 inch brads. And so it's been nailed all around each of the pedicles here. And so those are going to be permanently in place at this point. So the next stages will be in another week and a half or so is to remove all the carding, and then we'll start the finishing process.
Okay, so now we're pulling a lot of our carding off, and you'll notice that we've got quite a bit of detail that is showing up here. So we'll keep pulling this off, and then later we may put it back on. It's had plenty of days of drying now, and so we'll get this all off, and then we're going to take it outside and get a couple of photos. Still got some finish work to do, but it's coming along.